Hey, it's Rob, aka the Orphic Creative, and welcome to another studio video. So today we are talking about these, my KRK Rokit studio monitors. These I've had for about 10 years or so they are by no means the latest or greatest technology. And in fact, even when I got them, they were pretty much at the bottom of the monitor pile. But one thing they are very good at reproducing is bass, and since I work a lot with electronic music styles, that suits me pretty well. And in fact, these speakers are actually more of a backup for me because I actually tend to do most of my mixing in headphones. And I know that there'll be a million purists out there waiting to tell me that I'm wrong and type lovely things in the comments. But I've actually done it like this for many years and it's what I'm used to. I find that for really detailed pin-sharp precision when trying to pick out things in a mix, you really just can't beat a good set of headphones. But I don't solely mix on headphones, and that is why these monitors are here. It's so that I can A/B test my mix between my headphones and the speakers, and that allows me to find things that perhaps I might not have heard on the headphones. So these speakers have always been pretty solid, pretty dependable, and I've been able to rely on them for nearly a decade now. However, recently I started having a bit of a weird problem with one of them, and that is what this video is all about. And if you happen to have a pair of KRK monitors, I strongly suggest you watch this because it's quite likely that you're going to have to do what I just did in this video. So let's jump back in time now to when this problem first started to appear, and you can have a look at what I had to do to solve it. Right, unfortunately my Rokit 8 studio monitors seem to have suffered some kind of problem. I've got a basic electronic kick loaded up here, and this right hand speaker is just full of distortion. That one sounds fine. If I change to the other side, that is foobarred. I genuinely have no idea how this could have happened because I was using these speakers, well, I use them every day. I haven't done anything crazy with them, I haven't been running them very hard. Just normal studio use basically. So the only thing we can do is see if there's any way that we can spot anything going on in the electronics inside. Right, so we have two boards. We have an amplifier board, which is this, and we have the preamp, which is this. Okay, so here's a close-up of the board, and you can see what they've done is they've put this really annoying goo on everything, and particularly on all of the tops of the caps, which I have no idea why they would do that. I don't know whether that's supposed to reduce interference perhaps, I don't know. But basically it makes it impossible to tell what the condition of the caps is. One thing that is a little concerning, at the base of that cap, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some funny colouring going on there, which looks a little bit like it could be leaking out of the cap, I'm not sure. Right, I've switched lenses now, and I think you can see a little bit better. That colouring down the bottom there does not look good to me. I would guess that that has leaked out of the caps, but I'm not entirely sure. So I am not an electronics expert by any means, so I must admit I'm a little bit out of my depth here. But just taking a look at this, there's a few things which is just a bit concerning to me. The first is, if you look at the bottom of this cap here where it's soldered onto the board, there's some definite issues going on here, almost like it's chipped away at the solder. You can see here, this almost looks like ripples, and here as well. It's almost like the solder has got so hot that it's actually started to melt, and then it's reformed again when things have cooled down. I would say this doesn't look very healthy, if I'm honest, but then again, I'm not an expert on these things. But I think the only thing we can do really is take out these two caps, because they're the only two things where I can see what looks like something leaking. Okay, now that we've got the caps removed, look at this. This resistor here is completely fucked. It's completely disintegrated basically. I think this is leakage from the caps that's caused this, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, that is, I mean, look at that, that just fell apart. So That, I think, is our problem. It's quite difficult to aim the camera down in there, but I don't know if you can see, there is definitely something that looks like leakage in there as well. So I guess the best thing to do would be to replace all of these caps, because I don't know, yeah, I mean there's clearly been some problems here. Right, so here's our board which has been liberated from these awful capacitors. So I will go ahead and get some replacements for these and see if it restores order. I'll also have to replace this resistor which suffered a death, I think as a result of corrosion, but I'm not entirely sure. So I have done some more research on the good old internet, and I have discovered that in fact this black stuff is most likely the culprit. So the caps are probably okay, but I've ordered new ones anyway and I'm going to replace them. But yeah, this black stuff, apparently what happens is over time it becomes conductive. And that then causes problems where it shorts out various components on the board. And that could explain what was going on with this resistor, because if it was shorting out over this resistor, that would have definitely caused a heat buildup for sure. And that might have been what ruined it in the end. So let's see if we can test this theory. So I have my multimeter. Okay, so I'm not touching anything metal here, I'm only touching this black stuff. Okay, there we go. So it's not a very large charge in my particular case. There you go. But clearly there is some charge being carried by this stuff, which shouldn't be happening. And in some cases this has caused major problems with this board, including sending 40 plus volts through the output stage to the tweeter, which has then obviously ruined the tweeter. Thankfully that hasn't happened in my case, but clearly this stuff needs to be removed. So this is the state of play at the moment until the new capacitors arrive. I have managed to chip a fair amount of this off the board now. It's quite hard going because once it gets hot it hardens and becomes almost as hard as rock. This is what it should be like. You can see here it's got this sort of soft kind of taffy consistency. That's what it would have been like when it was new. And in fact you can see some here on this preamp board and it's still got a soft consistency here. The problem is when it hardens, for some reason the chemistry of it changes and it becomes more conductive. Apparently it becomes hygroscopic, and that is the reason why it starts to corrode these metal parts that it comes into contact with. So because this board gets really hot, that is really what the problem is. So clearly someone hasn't done enough research on what the use case is for this stuff. Right, so all of the replacement parts have now arrived. We have these larger capacitors which are going to replace the original ones that were in there, and we have these smaller ones which are going to replace these two. The originals were different sizes, but they both have the same rating, which is 1000 microfarads, so hopefully it shouldn't matter. I think this is just a footprint type thing. I have no idea why they didn't just use two of the same, but for some reason they didn't. Anyhow, we'll replace it with these two, and we've also got some new resistors. They do look slightly different to the resistor that came out of the board. So I think what I'm going to do is, in addition to replacing that one in the middle, I'm going to just also replace this one as well, so they're both of the same type. It shouldn't really make any difference. They are both carbon film resistors. I think these ones are just a bit more chunky. They can take a bit more power. So shouldn't be a problem, but I think I'm just going to make sure that they both match, mainly just for my own peace of mind. Right, well, I'm not claiming to be the best solderer in the world, but I think these are all nice and firm, good connections on all of them, so I think we should be okay. For these large capacitors down at the bottom here, I've specifically left a bit of an air gap under here to try and avoid things getting too hot again, but I actually think that the problem was more to do with that goo than anything else. Right, so I've just wired up everything temporarily, and moment of truth. I can hear a bit of a hum, which is not great, but maybe that's just because this is an unbalanced cable. Not too bad. Obviously it doesn't sound right because the cover's off the back. I don't hear any distortion though. Okay, well, early signs seem pretty positive. It didn't blow up, which is of course the first good thing. Can hear a bit of a buzz, but I think it might be just because the back's off and I can hear the transformer. So yeah, I think the next thing is to put it together. Right, speaker's back in place, so it's moment of truth time. That sounds pretty good. But the annoying thing is, I've now got to do that with this speaker as well.